Hey, everybody. It's Denise Siegel, and this is my new channel. Thank you for subscribing to it. We're going to talk about creativity as a spiritual practice. So, basically, I just want to start out with a project that we can all do that will help you with this ultimate practice. Basically, all art comes out of spiritual practice, whether you know it or not. The earliest rituals and human experience with the divine comes through the different creative outlets, cave paintings, drumming, chanting. All of those things come out of the desire to worship and to be one with creator and creation. Creativity in itself, doing a work, is a meditative state. Painting, writing, playing music, singing, all of these things get us in touch with our divine spark of creator within us. And so I want to really help people to get in touch with that inside of themselves, find a way to channel it for positive good and change in this world. And at the same time, teach people how to calm themselves down, how to focus, how to use not just meditative techniques that calm the mind, but also go one step further to create and to manifest. But I don't mean manifestation in like, I want a new Lamborghini. I mean manifestation in terms of manifesting who you really are, connecting with spirit, learning to calm yourself and be focused, how to make beautiful objects for people that you love, how to make pragmatic objects for people that need them. I do believe that as we come into the 2025s and into the turn of this next decade, there is going to be a lot of disruption and chaos. And I believe also that there will be very much ups and downs with people's financial stability. So learning how to be in touch with your creativity will not only ground you, center you, give you something to focus on. Our culture is a completely consumer-based culture, meaning people most of the time spend, like, I'm not going to name names, but I know people who basically their hobby is just to go shopping. That's all they have for themselves. They don't have a focus or a sense of purpose. There was an old Barbara Kruger piece that said, "I shop, therefore I am." And I think that pretty much covers it in terms of consumerism being sort of a fill-in for people's sense of loneliness, wanting connection, wanting something better, and not knowing how to get there. So creativity is actually the thing that will fill that void for you and the people you love. There is something really quite amazing and beautiful about putting your energy into something and sharing it with people, whether that's on a scale of having a show at a gallery or whether that's on the scale of just giving somebody you love something that you made. There is nothing more beautiful than that. I think it's something to be treasured. My Aunt Doris, who was one of the most positive, influential role models in my childhood, was my father's sister, one of his many siblings. And she was very creative. She would make dolls and all kinds of things. And she taught me the joy of receiving things that somebody made for me. These things were, she thought about them. She sewed them with her hands. She stuffed them. The whole time thinking about giving it to me. And there's something really amazing about that. I still have those dolls that she made me from when I was a child. And they're the only things from my childhood that I still have because they were so valuable to me. And I think even, for example, my mother-in-law went into the hospital recently, and I had made her a shawl, and it's a knitted object that I made a while back, and I had withheld giving it to her until I was going to give it to her later, and then she got sick, and I brought it to her in the hospital, and she told me that it just, not only the warmth of it, but just the idea that I made it for her, and it reminded her, it was a physical object that connected her to her family, that made her feel loved and special, and was very healing for her. And these are the kind of things that you can do with creativity. And not only that's what you get when you give it to someone, but you get the joy of making it and getting in touch with that part of yourself that is the divine spark. So we are going to start with something super dumb and simple today. And we'll move on to painting and making things. It will evolve into other things, I'm sure. I'm mostly a painter and I'm a photographer. I'm also a writer, as many of you know. I also knit and I make jewelry and all those things. I will have people on here at some point when we need certain skill sets. I will bring them into the fold and also interview other people who are creative and who see this practice as a creative spiritual practice. If you've been paying attention to me for a while, you know about my book, Trees for the Forest. And that came about really like in a vision. And as I wrote it, it was sort of a little bit like a reverie. Now, it's not that simple to write a novel. It's a lot of work and planning and stuff. But many of the ideas came because I was in that state of mind of meditation, of every day sitting down at my typewriter or my computer writing and just going deep into myself and pulling things out by connecting with spirit and the oversoul. I think of creativity as the connection to, some people think of it as the right brain, but all things creative are connected. One, if you, that idea of the imagination and psychic ability is a very porous one. And if you're somebody who's experienced psychic activities, paranormal stuff, when you're younger, people, oh, that's just your imagination. But let me just say that the imagination and the place where psychic activity occurs is the same space. And it is often in our imagination that we get information, things we're daydreaming. We're picking up information. We don't really originate thoughts too much. We actually just perceive often and it's not uncommon for people to come up with the same idea across the world from one another. The car was invented by Mercedes-Benz and Ford at the same time. In fact, both held the patent because no one could decide who came up with it first. It's a really common theme. I have come up with ideas when I was writing and pitching things to television and developing stuff. I came up with ideas that would come out, even though I'm sure they didn't steal my idea. This is why some people think people steal their ideas, but I'm not suggesting anybody stole my idea. I'm suggesting that these ideas were floating around in the ether. I plucked them out, and other people later did as well. So you're tapping into something else, something that is wanting to be born. And that is very much the same space as it's for a different purpose. It's to bring something into this world as opposed to an idea or a perception or some kind of event. But it is very much connected. So the first thing we're going to do today, because it's so essential, and it's one of the things that goes historically with every single practice in terms of meditative practice, spiritual practice, and or magical practice, is every witch has a book of shadows, every wizard has a grimoire, and New Agers have dream books. So what we're going to make is basically a special sacred book in which you're going to write down your dreams. Now, I do suggest you have a dream journal, and the dream journal is really for dual purpose. You may be one of those people that thinks you don't dream or that you don't remember your dreams. When you write down your dreams every morning and you get that in your head before you go to sleep, I've got to remember my dreams so I can write them down. You start to remember them. And what ends up happening is the more you write them down, the more you remember them. And remembering your dreams and writing them down, will find that there is information in that dream space that comes to you that is very edifying. Often it is premonitory. Not always, but it can be. But you won't remember it if you don't write it down and you don't pay attention, right? The other thing about writing down your dreams is that you can prompt yourself to ask questions and also kind of interact, eventually getting to the place where you can actually have lucid dreams and then get to the point where you can astrally project. Now, it's not going to all happen overnight, but the first step is remembering your dreams and being aware of your dream state while you are dreaming on some level. And you can't get there if you haven't started with point A. Sorry, I had to ask my family to settle down for a second. Okay, so when I started wanting to write my dreams down, and also in the tradition that I learned, you have to have a sort of, it's like when you get a new deck of cards or when you get any kind of anything that's sort of special, you want to connect with it. You need to have some kind of connection, whether it's putting it under your pillow at night or keeping it close to you for a while. You can't just, go ahead and pick any old thing off any log and just start using it. Any kind of like just crappy looking, you know, uh, regular old thing and use it as your special dream journal, right? So back in the day, in the late 80s, early 90s, it wasn't easy to come by journals. They were mostly for little kids. You could find like little diaries with the locks on them and stuff like that that were basically um, just really not set up to be any kind of thing that you could, that was magical or special in any way. Much later into the mid 90s and late 90s, you got a proliferation of journals. But early on, there wasn't any. So I made my own. And I suggest if you don't have a journal, it's a very simple thing and it can be very fun to make. And we're going to just start out with I mentioned it. So what you do is you just get one of these kind of deals. These are like 50 cents. You buy these guys, a lined notebook, one of these wide ruled composition books, and you get a piece of paper. You measure it. This one I think is 9 inches by the whole thing is 15 inches, right? And you cut yourself out a piece of paper. Now I used, I had bought some Strathmore roll of paper at my local art store that was on sale for $3, which is insane. But you can use construction paper, any kind of paper, as long as it's big enough. And basically, you just cut it out, and you do what you did when you were a kid, and just make basically you put this in there, right? And you cover your book up, and you glue it in. You glue it in place. You will just glue down the edges here and here. And you cut this to size, glue that, nick this part right here, cut that, like notch it, and just glue it together like a book cover, right? Because it is paper that is drawing paper, then what you can do is you can draw on it. These are really old and they're just kind of cuckoo looking, but done very quickly. But they're just little drawings I put on there when I was pretty young, probably in my late teens. And you have your own special dream book. Now, you can probably buy one that's really nice now. You don't really need to do this project, but it is fun. And there are also journals like that come already with, they're hardbound with canvas over the front of them, and you can just paint them yourself. I suggest, though, coming up with something. If it's not that, the other thing I do when I sort of mark something that's special is I find stuff on the internet.